The domain name system, what exactly does it mean for you? In this presentation I'll be covering 5 topics which make up the domain name system. They are the size of the domain name system, the important components of the domain name system, function of the domain name system, any legislation which currently affects the use of the domain name system, and limitation of the operation of the domain name system. Some things you may not know about the domain name system. There are over 17,000 possible combinations for 3-letter words which make up a domain name, and all of them are registered. And the most common one is actually 11 characters long. So what is the DNS? It essentially forms the backbone of the internet, and you can use the DNS to search for names such as google.com, whereas if you didn't have the DNS you would have to, instead of entering a name, you'd have to enter a series of numbers known as an Internet Protocol address, or IP address for short. The size of the domain name system. There's no specific central server for the domain name system. All the information contained among the domain names is stored on a whole load of servers all across the world. Next you'll see an image that shows the locations of all of the DNS servers over the world. Now, here is some information about the actual organisations that control the domain names servers. So as for the components of the DNS, there are 3 components. They are the DNS namespace, the DNS name server, and the resolver. The DNS namespace basically allows for the structure of the domain name to be formed. Each name is assigned its own namespace, so it knows where it fits in the hierarchy of the domain name. The domain name tree is so named because it branches out in the same way that a tree does, but it kind of works opposite in the way to an ordinary tree, simply because the actual root of the tree, i.e. the top level of the domain, is actually at the top rather than down at the bottom. The name server. You have 2 different sorts of name servers. You have the authoritative server and the recursive and caching server. The authoritative server itself is made up of 2 different parts, the master and the slave server. The master server will basically provide the response for a lot of the DNS queries that come in. And the slave server basically duplicates the function of the master server, allowing us backup should something happen to the master server. The recursive and caching server functions like an archive. It basically allows any answers to more common DNS queries to be provided immediately to the computer that requested it, which basically allows the master server on the authoritative side to answer any more unusual queries that come in. And finally we come to the resolver. The resolver's function is to basically translate domain names into IP addresses and back again. It's essential this be done both forward and backward, because if they didn't, any websites being returned to the user who was looking for them through the means of a search engine would basically come up with a whole load of IP addresses and not a domain name. The function of the DNS. The DNS has a lookup facility which allows it to both look up information about domain names from the computer that requested it and also send that information back. This works twofold in the way that it has a forward lookup zone and a backward lookup zone. A news story dated approximately a year ago showed what actually happened when the government of Egypt ordered the internet companies to both shut down their IP routing and also shut down the DNS. Legislation affecting the DNS. There seem to be many legal issues arising where a company, for example a large company, has not registered a domain name for their own name, for example under their own shop name, and then someone else already has done. The larger shop obviously wants its own domain name, but because that name is no longer available, it either has to try and buy the domain name off the person that already has it, or else try and seek a legal remedy for it. Limitations of the DNS. The DNS itself is not so much limited by the actual way it performs lookups, but it is limited instead by the number of IP addresses available. Under IPv4, there's a 32-bit addressing system in place, which means that the largest number of IP addresses which can be assigned is approximately 4.3 billion. Under IPv6, the addressing is used on 128-bit addressing. As a result, the total number of IP addresses available under that system will be 340 unidecillion. That's 340 with 38 zeros after it. In conclusion, the DNS is a very large topic. However, as a final thought, technology and the internet is constantly changing, and as a result, people should know what's going on behind the internet when they actually enter a name into the address bar, or they do a search or anything like that. Thank you for your attention.